Hmm.
She's recording.
Yeah, I see George. I see George. Is John on the line?
I don't see him.
What are you holding that up?
What?
What were you holding that up for?
I just don't understand why that budget is different.
Ask her why you're recording. I like the
John, is that you?
Yes, it is.
Don't.
there's someone else in his office.
Okay, it is 7 o'clock. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Please rise and pledge allegiance to our flag. allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic
Which it stands.
one nation, under God, indivisible.
Liberty, justice for all.
Thank you,
I don't
Martin.
have a video up. Can you
I'm
see?
sorry.
I don't have a video up. Can you hear me at least?
Yes, we can hear you.
My video up or no? There we go. Disregard.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
I would just like to say to the public on the call right now that this agenda was deliberately truncated to only last 1 hour because we all are going to leave this meeting to attend the budget hearing with the Board of Finance at 8 o'clock. So the only item on this agenda is to get an update on the ambulance department. And I will give a brief update of activity since our last meeting, especially related to COVID-19. And then we will have a brief break, and so that we can all sign off of this meeting and attend the budget hearing. So that being said, that is why there's no public comment in the beginning of the meeting, because we want to get right to the ambulance presentation, thinking that a lot of the comments might be addressed after listening to that presentation. So all those in favor of the agenda, say aye. Aye. Okay. So 6 months ago, we embarked on an effort to try and what I will call reorganize our ambulance department to address some of its organizational issues that one might say were internal, and then certainly to address some issues that were external to the department, that challenges that are facing EMS departments, not only here in Durham and in the state of Connecticut, but basically around the nation. So we said at the time that around April timeframe, we might have a good understanding and expectation of what the future may or may not be for the ambulance department. And so we've invited Chief Lou Brockett to give us an update and share with us some of his challenges and some of his successes since October, or when he took over, which let's just say November, because it was late October when you took over. Right, Lou? I see you might be joined by some of your colleagues in the room.
Yes, Dr. Michael Zenker and Andrew.
Okay. So you have the floor, Chief.
All right, thank you very much, ma'am. Over the last 6 months with our current staffing, we currently have 5 DVAC paid employees, 17 volunteers, and VinTech assistants. During the last few months, 8 volunteers were either out of state because schools got closed down and got called back home, or volunteers didn't respond due to their jobs, or some just didn't volunteer because of the COVID-19. So we had to increase our VinTech hours. The calls from 0600 to 2400, 7 days a week. We covered over 233 calls from November to April. We transported over 141. And if you divide that out, we had approximately, if you take from October to April, we missed 33 calls total. But I mean, I don't have any stats for October since I wasn't here. I took over in November, and we had 23 calls that we had to turn over. Out of those 23 calls that we missed, we had 3 of those calls we were out of service, 7 of those calls we were on a call with 14.4, and 4 of those were after midnight itself. Our VinTech cost total for the months from December all the way to approximately April of 2020 so far has been $50,915.25. The income from our operations account for the last 3 months, I just got today, late this afternoon, the one for April. But from January through March, the total income that we brought in was $44,192.71, leaving us a balance in our account of $30,954.98. Our expenses for that same time period was $30,508.31, and that was for payroll, paying VinTech, paying payroll and other bills that we have, such as Shared Response, Middlesex Medic, Hunter's Medic, etc. Our donations account, as of the end of March, we had $25,858.67 left over. Scheduling of personnel. One of the criteria that we had to meet back in December was go to an online scheduling system. In March, we went to Latitech, and it produces reports for us of, at the end of the month, the hours that the volunteers have, how many hours that the paid personnel had, plus as well if they took any personal time off, and it gives us our total overall. And it also lists the amount of hours that the VinTech personnel have. We moved, since that time frame, we had a person that was on the overnight from midnight to 06 to cover, along with a responder. Back in December, we had VinTech help us cover those hours on the overnight. However, we started and switched that person over to the PM shift of 1800 to 2400. Since that time, we've only had a few calls on the overnights. And the main thing is that that person, the reason for the switch was due to the fact that he wasn't keeping up his EMT skills. With switching over to Latitech, the nice thing about it is members can go in, they could sign up for the schedule. They send me an email or a text message saying that, hey, I'm on the schedule, Chief. Can you just turn around and click me on? I approve it right away. And it also shows up in our monthly reporting system that we give to the Board of Finance. As far as the billing, another area that was brought up, the area of balanced billing. After the presentation from Shared Response to the Board of Finance back in, it was either February or March, we last month as a board approved to go to balanced bill and also have to be billing done on a weekly basis versus the current monthly basis that it's been going out in the past. As far as recruiting goes, today I sent a letter to the fire department asking for them to help us out, to help recruit some of their folks that are over there. There's a lot of folks here in town, both EMS as well as fire, where we have enough EMTs in town that could assist us with staffing so that we could work together as a team to move forward in the direction of the future. I've also talked to Jim Santa Cruz and Dr. Zenker over at the hospital to ask us with some help in recruiting and also with both for paid personnel and our volunteers. We'll be posting a sign over there at the hospital to do this. We also, outside of headquarters, posted on the front area there a poster sign asking for members if they would like to, or people that want to join and all become part of our membership. They can contact us as well. One other thing that we approved last month was a new stipend program to help with recruitment. And however, that is being reviewed right now. This coming Wednesday, we have a meeting with a lawyer to talk about that to make sure that we meet all our labor laws, et cetera. Other than that, that is my report for the update as current.
So can we get back to the financials? It didn't sound, and I'm sorry I don't have them in front of me, but it didn't sound like you were breaking even. It sounded like you were operating in a deficit.
As far as
Expenses versus revenue.
no, if you take, I mean, On the monthly bill that we sent to the Board of Finance and all, it gives us our whole report there. And I mean, each month we have been in the surplus for both sides of
Okay,
both. So I mean, as far as the overall deficit, I mean, going through our QuickBooks and everything else, yes, there was a month where we're showing, but they're still balancing it out, trying to get that thing fixed for us.
are you including Vintech in that calculation?
No, with the overall budget, ma'am,
Yes.
I keep our budget separate from the Vintech budget. I mean, currently, right now, from the report I got from Beth the other day, I have $23,000 left over in our DVAC budget itself, which 15,000 is still left for Vintech, and the rest of it is left for our expenses.
So you're using the town contribution money to cover Vintech.
Currently, yes.
So if you did include that expense, then we would not be balanced. We would be in a deficit.
I would have to go back and look at that, man.
Okay.
Well, Lou, when you mentioned your expenses at 30,000, including payroll, did that include Vintech?
No, that was not. That's just how it comes out of our payroll itself, George.
That's
And that was, and that's included over the months.
Again, I mean, I'll start by saying thank you. Herculean task, I understand that. And obviously there's a way to go. But the here and now, where you are, how are you on missed calls presently?
I'm going to turn that over to Andy.
See ya.
As far as missed calls are concerned, out of October was our month where we passed the most calls. That was 10. In the last, since January, we passed 2 calls in January, 3 in February, 7 in March, 3 last month in April. And those vary. Most of them are daytime calls. A couple of them in the last 2 months were overnight calls. Not sure what you want me to say about it.
I was just wondering about the numbers. That is it. I know that we started off, we were hitting, we were out of the percentile range that we needed to be in. I'm wondering if we're in there yet.
George, we're down to right now, if you take from November to currently in April, we are at 0.086% missed calls.
And you were somewhere in the neighborhood of, was it 17% or some
It
number
was a
like
lot higher before I took over as the
Exactly.
as the
Exactly.
chief.
So you're making strides there, it sounds like.
Yes, sir.
Okay, good.
And all of those missed calls, some of them were because the ambulance was already in at another call, and some were when the ambulance was out of service. Is that correct, Andy?
Correct. I count 6 calls when 14-4 is already dispatched out, and 3 when we're out of service during the month of January.
Okay.
Is the ambulance back in service now? I know it was out over the weekend.
Yes, sir. Went in at 12 o'clock today.
Good. How are you guys? I mean, I understand what you're saying about recruiting and asking for help, but I'll ask Doc and you, Andy. How is Lou doing asking for help? Is he starting to request help from you guys and other volunteers to do a little bit more of the daily routines?
So,
Is Lou still a goddamn control freak?
No.
No, you can't answer that.
Okay.
he told us the answer, Ellie.
That's what I'm afraid of. From the training perspective and all that, I know that you were doing a lot of it yourself. I mean, is there any administration type of aid that you need or are getting or can get, or we can advise in that regard?
I think more need than can get. He's definitely getting more assistance at an administrative level, as well as some of the newer volunteers we have are kicking and doing things on their own, just making the service run smoother. Had all the combinations for all local EDs. One of the new kids went through and made a whole list so that we had it in the ambulance. He's also a millennial, so he's good with computers and downloading all of the AED stuff. So there's that stuff, but there's still kind of the higher level that I think we could all help out to do better. But there are a few new people in the pipeline for volunteers. Getting them through some of the wicket is the difficult part.
Right.
Hopefully the issue with the fire service will alleviate a lot of that stress, because those folks have already gone through their OSHA training and all the other training and should be able to slide right into our schedule as long as, you know, they come out to volunteer.
Right. But I mean, what you don't want to have happen, and I've heard some issues like this, that people are actually looking to volunteer, but between the interview process and then the training process, you guys, your training budget is pretty limited. And I wouldn't want to see you guys lose some potential recruits. You know, if there's not a program in place or someone who can help offload that burden from Lou.
Deputy chief.
Yeah, I mean, you know, we've got a chief and assistant chief, but one of the things, and Lou and I had talked about the whole issue with the firefighters, a lot of them already work as EMTs.
Right.
Some of them work commercially. So getting them through a training program will take minimal effort, really little more than accustoming them to the back of our ambulance versus the one they work in day to day. So we're hoping to make that a quick transition if that all goes through.
Okay, good.
So you sent a letter to the fire service. So the last count that I knew from Chief Chad, we have about 23 firefighters that have certifications that could be utilized in the EMS department. And so you did send a letter. I got a copy of it. George and John, I'll forward it to you. But basically you outlined exactly what was needed for a firefighter to become a member. And it seemed to me a much more streamlined list and pathway than ever was described before. Have you gotten any feedback? I know you just sent it today, but have you gotten any feedback that the firefighters will perceive it as such?
Nothing yet, ma'am. No, I know Rob is going to present it at his next meeting, so.
Okay. All right. So prior to you taking over, we did get a budgetary proposal from Hunters for $130,000. That's a rounded up number. $1,000 a year, we would get borderline coverage to cover EMS services to the town of Durham. And you have seen some of the communication that we've gotten from certain residents asking us when we are going to reconsider and possibly look to a commercial vendor to give us EMS services. Obviously, the three of you are working hard to keep our ambulance on the road. But can you give us a perspective from a professional standpoint, the difference in service from having an ambulance in town versus waiting for ambulance to come to a residence from anywhere outside of our borders?
Yeah, I'll let Dr. Zenker speak on that one, because he's got some of the stuff here.
Yeah, one of the misnomers is the term line coverage. It does not mean that there is an ambulance sitting, waiting to respond to a call into Durham at our house restaurant. It means that you are online with whatever ambulance is next available. So that ambulance could be coming out of Wallingford, Washington Street in Middletown. It could be coming out of Midstate in Meriden. So really what you're getting is a response time similar to what you have right now. You're paying a lot more than you are right now. And the service that you're getting is really the same. There's other issues on top of it that, speaking as a physician and medical director, if you did go with a contract service, I am no longer the medical director for the firm. That would be done if it was Hunters through Midstate, if it was AMR or Aetna out of Hartford. I would have no control over the quality assurance piece of the response to the town of Durham. I run into this all the time because Hunters does provide service to Middletown, Portland, Middlefield. So we work closely with them. But again, I don't have any say over that. What you're seeing right now is the missed calls that occur occasionally overnight typically roll over to Hunters. We don't pay anything for that service. That is a mutual aid call. Hunters coming into town at no cost to us, transporting the patient. So the service, the response times, and the quality, the level of care is going to be the same, except that we would be paying more for it. And I've verbalized this to a number of people that I personally, as someone with 30 years of EMS experience, think that that's foolish money. I see the only two options is where we are now, or paying to have a full-time ambulance in town, which would be astronomically high. But right now, I think we would be paying a first year maybe of $130,000. I'd imagine it would go up from there. For really the same service that we have at the present time, and a service that is improving as we move forward, and especially if we can get the firefighters recruited onto this. I think we'd be able to cut Vintech to nothing, if not zero them out, and be able to respond within town 24/7 using our volunteers and our paid staff. Just my opinion.
Andy, do you share that opinion?
Insofar as, yeah, I think the expenditure for going to a full-time commercial service in town is huge, and we've discussed that in previous meetings. My only comment differing from what Dr. Zanker has said is that I think response times would not exactly be the same. I think it would be a little bit longer depending on where that ambulance is coming from. They've done pretty well for mutual aid for us in the past, but there's always that potential if they're busy and they can't get somebody, and we've run into that before. So I don't think the response times themselves are exactly the same as having an ambulance in town, staffed by DVAC personnel or either volunteers or DVAC paid personnel. But aside, that would be my only comment, differing from Hank's opinion. I would agree with everything else he's said.
And Andy, you're probably closest to the numbers. Are they coming around for you? Do you see this balance billing on a weekly basis? Do you see this working, or will you guys be able to?
I think the balance billing affords us some additional flexibility as far as our income is concerned. I don't do any of the treasury stuff, so I'm not as up to speed on the income and on the revenue and the expenditures for payroll and such. I don't typically follow that. Lou works with our treasurer and our billing coordinator for that, so I'm not the best to ask.
Okay.
But I think certainly you consider the past calls that we, not the past calls, but the no transport calls that we've done, that certainly is a significant number, and it doesn't generate revenue. And something like a cardiac arrest where you try and resuscitate somebody on scene and then they ultimately do a field declaration and no transport. I mean, that's a lot of work. That's a lot of use of supplies and a lot of manpower on scene, but we get no reimbursement for that because there's no transport. So I think going to balance billing, although we've never been in favor of doing that, in light of how things have evolved over the last 2 years, I think I'm in support of with the board of directors of the ambulance corps in pursuing balance billing reluctantly. But I think it's a necessary step.
So I'd like to talk a little bit more about recruiting, and I understand we're in a tough environment to do that, but that doesn't mean that we can't spend some more effort on that. And I think, in fact, it's necessary in order to even consider, continuing down the path that we're on. It is absolutely critical that we get some more people on the roster as volunteers. So you've done the outreach to fire, you've done the outreach to Middlesex Hospital and asked them to maybe send some of their surplus interest our way. Do you think your vote changing the structure of the stipend will help with that effort?
Definitely, ma'am. With the stipend program and everything else, that will definitely bring in some more people. I mean, right now, even some of the folks down at North Branford that I spoke to, if we go to a stipend program, some of those folks may come down here because right now they can't get on the schedule for 1 to 2 months. That's how many people they have with their stipend program. Theirs is a lot higher, of course. But by doing the stipend program itself, it will definitely bring in some folks.
So I know you're having it reviewed. How far away from implementation are you?
Hopefully after the review this week with the lawyer and everything else, hopefully we'll have it up for either, if not this month, definitely in June.
George, John?
Just on another note, I'm just curious, how are you guys equipment up for the COVID-19? Do you have all the PPEs you could need at this point, or are you still looking?
George, that's a very good question. I've been going down to, I've been working with the state of Connecticut on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Tuesday, I go down to North Haven for Region 2, which is what we're in. We've been getting quite a bit of supplies and everything else. Thursday, I go up to Mohegan, help with Region 4 and all. And across the state, there's been a lot of PPE that's been given out. We're sitting pretty well. I'm putting together an inventory right now of everything that we have, putting it out to both Kevin, since he's our emergency management person and all, keeping him up to date on that. And then as soon as I finish after tomorrow, I'll have more of an update by Wednesday of how much stuff we have on hand. Right now, the only thing that's really holding us back for everybody in the state of Connecticut is the infectious control gowns. We've been getting enough Tyvek. N95 masks have increased. We have over almost 300 of the face shields. As far as the surgical masks, the ones that you see with some of the guys here and stuff, those right now we're at approximately around either 2,500 or 3,000. So we're anticipating, not only just for this, but also for the if it happens to come back in October.
Well, since this is obviously a unique event, will this hit into your budget going forward, or are people very generous in donating all these supplies at this point?
I mean, right now the supply is coming from either the federal government or the state. But as far as the budget goes, I mean, I've already ordered gloves. I've ordered 24 infectious control kits for right now. When the new budget comes out after July 1st, we'll be inventorying and getting some more out there. And those gowns should be out, they said, within the next month or so. But then again, things change. But it will have a small impact on the budget for the future as well. I don't think it's going to take the whole budget, but it's something that we just have to think about, because this was something that was blinded by, nobody knew about.
Right.
Okay, thank you. Anything else, Andy?
Yeah. First off, it's great seeing all three of you together, working together, everybody with a specialty, sort of say. Andy, I just had one question for you. You mentioned with reluctancy to go to the balance billing. I've always, do you see any ways around that? I've always thought that is more, a regressive type of, it hurts our most vulnerable citizens the most, or, could help hurt our most vulnerable citizens the most. Do you see any other ways around that?
First of all, I don't think it really necessarily impacts the most vulnerable. It's certainly if somebody has no insurance, that could be an issue. But for the most part, we're talking about people who are insured, and we're just trying to recoup the whatever the insurance doesn't pay. Our billing service would be able to better answer that question as to how much potential that is money-wise. But I don't really see don't see an alternative really to pursuing balanced billing.
Okay. Do you have like an estimate on how much it would bring in, or would we be able to get that? I just don't want someone not to call for an ambulance because we have a new policy that they're afraid they're going to end up with a part of the bill.
Well, before we implement this, we promised that we would be sending out communication to our residents and informing them exactly what balance billing is. I think you decided we weren't going to send anybody to collections. There's a whole continuum of not billing to sending to collections, and there's a lot of leeway in between to work with our residents on that, so that nobody should feel reluctant. Speaking of reluctance, it has been reported that the acuity of calls, EMS calls, is increasing all over the state, simply because people are waiting too long to call EMS because of their reluctancy to go to a hospital or a facility at this point. So as an aside, that is happening during this COVID time period. So I think we still have yet, before that's totally implemented, some public outreach and public education to do. Did you guys sign off? I don't see you anymore. Hmm.
I'm gonna tell Louise.
Well, Laura, I mean, I think you bring up a good point. As long as there's a mechanism,
Yeah.
and I don't care if we start a fund, I don't care if we raise the money, I don't care how we do it. I just want there to be some mechanism for someone who can't pay is not going to get taken to collections, like you said,
Yep.
over that. So that's my only point, and it sounds like you answered it well, so I'm satisfied.
Okay, so I'm sorry that it appears that Lou's, oh, maybe they're coming back on. Hold on. So I think they were finished. I'm going to give you a quick update and then we can get to public comments so that we can adjourn and head on over to the public hearing. Shady Lane, we continue to receive DOT comments and concerns from neighbors that we're trying to address on the improvements of the road. So we're working to finish final design so that the utilities can at least be brought up to the new house so that that new homeowner can move in sometime this summer. So it continues to be a lot of work on that. So as far as the remote meetings, there continues to be some technical issues to address, including my own operator error in the last BOS meeting. I thought the auto record button was on, but it was not. So we've changed some settings. We've made an upgrade to our account and things I think are going a little bit more smoothly. We're learning each and every meeting with something else. So I again ask for your patience while we're getting through this. And just so you know, I do have staff working. I believe that some of this might stay as our restrictions are lifted. And so while we're researching and learning how to do what we have to do during this period, I also have staff working on how we might operate into the future. I believe that there are some residents who might prefer to watch town government in this fashion. I believe that there are going to be commission members who will want to, from time to time, video into a meeting because of a personal situation or because they're traveling on business. So while we're doing all of this technology, we're also trying to look to the future as well. We set up Zoom meetings with Eversource. We did hear from residents that there are still some questions about how they might access the natural gas line for their residences or businesses. So we set up 2 Zoom meetings that are going to happen this week. One on Wednesday at 11 o'clock, that'll be geared more towards businesses, and one for residents on Thursday at 4 o'clock. We sent out letters to all the property owners that are along the line so that they would definitely know about the meetings. The response rate for Census 2020 is increasing. Connecticut is at 61.1%, and I'm happy to say that Durham is at 71.1%. So I see Martin Anderson is on the line, and he was employed, or are you still employed, Martin, by the Census Department? You could just nod your head.
No, I'm not. I was a lister.
Oh, that was
Just
the one
making
thing.
sure that we knew all the addresses, valid addresses in town to
Okay.
send one. And so people fill them out and get those in, then there'll be less likelihood of a visitor coming during
Right,
these times.
right. So we're going to continue to get residents to participate via the online and other methods, because those who don't will be getting a visit by a census worker going forward so that we can count everyone that should be counted. Martin French, who's also on the line, has been working on the important information to give to residents about the 2 tax relief programs that we approved a few meetings ago. We are going to be putting out a postcard mailing to every resident explaining what the programs are and pushing them to our website page that is being developed where the application form will be, etc. The Indian Lane Bridge was open to all vehicular traffic on Saturday. I want to remind everyone that there are items on the punch list for this project, as well as Cream Pot Road, Co Road, and Higginham Road. And those finishing touches will be done this spring and summer. Oh, I just got a text. The internet crashed at his office, so they're on the phone right now. So if anybody has any questions for them, we can talk to them. I spent some time at the end of last week working with our Dennis Region 2. The state of Connecticut is standing up a ESF 14 Long-Term Recovery Steering Committee, which is going to be very multifaceted because this particular recovery is going to be multifaceted. It's going to be led by Lisa Temper Bates, and I will be one of the 15 representatives from our region representing the elected officials from this side of our 30-town region. So more to come on that. And as I reported at an earlier meeting, we have Martin Anderson and Melissa Conway working very closely with Kevin Donovan and to work on our local meetings. So I've already talked to Martin, and hopefully we'll have a lot of interface between our local committee and with this statewide committee. So you've heard the news about Reopen Connecticut, relaxing some of the restrictions starting on May 20th. And we'll be posting, if we haven't already, some of the guidance, or as Commissioner Lehman said today in a meeting I was on, it's really not guidance. They are rules that they're asking businesses to follow as we proceed and open up. So I have our town planner working with our restaurants in particular to see if what they may or may not need to open up in the fashion that the state is guiding them to. She put together a document that we've also posted so that even our residents will understand the restrictions by which they have to follow. And along those lines, we will be opening, bringing staff back into the buildings, town hall and the library. Policies are being created, supplies are being procured, and we're actually making some physical improvements to our building so that we can ensure the safety of our residents and the public as we start to interface again. I want to remind everybody that the town hall may be closed to the public, but all functions have been operational. So, you know, it's been a challenge. We're all anxious to get back to our new normal. And that's exactly what it's going to be, a new normal. You're going to see some barriers in place. You're going to see some distancing. You're going to see some new ways in interfacing with the library staff, et cetera. So more to come on that. I attended 2 training sessions on PFAS. One, how does PFAS get into our environment and how is it regulated? And litigation and municipal responses to PFAS. If you recall, PFAS is the chemical found in so many household products, as well as the firefighting foam that has polluted waterways and grounds surfaces across our nation, really. And then I also attended a webinar preparing municipalities for COVID-19 long-term recovery. I attended the weekly status meeting with the water main construction, the governor's weekly conference, Demis Region 2 weekly call, economic developer web roundtable, cost executive board and board meeting, RSD response team meetings, various health department meetings, Middlesex County Revitalization Commission, Chiefs Council, and the Planning and Zoning public hearing. As far as our health department numbers that have been reported, we're currently at 24 positive cases, 1 death and 1 possible death. It hasn't been confirmed, but it's presumed COVID related. So that's where we're at with that. I then will like to take some public comment, and if there are any selectmen comments before we have to adjourn. I see Joe Pasquale
Hi.
and Becky.
Um, I have a few comments and questions. Can you provide an update on the status of the Crooked Hill property and the Turkey Hill?
I don't have a status for tonight.
Have they been transferred?
No.
Okay. I'd also like to comment about Zoom. And it seems, you spoke of issues. We had problems with Zoom, as you're aware of, at our planning and zoning public hearing. And it seems to me that maybe you guys could put together a standard process for all boards and commissions to be using in using Zoom. And I was under the impression that members of the boards and commissions go on to Zoom one way, and then the public only can go on through a phone call. Is that correct?
Well, I think that was a decision that I think was made for the public hearing purpose, so that, and you can talk to Robin and the way she and Alicia set it up, and it might have been because that would limit the exposure of the Zoom bombing that people, and so some of the security issues, because it's when you have this open video that you open it up to more security issues. So I think because a public hearing was meant to attract more people than an average meeting would, it was set up that way. But I did not, so for instance, this meeting here didn't have those restrictions. So I think
Okay.
that's a choice that was made for that public hearing.
Well,
And
maybe we can come up with a consistent method so that people understand that when they're trying to access
right.
if public has to do it one way, that they understand they have to do it. The other comment about Zoom is that it seems there's an inconsistency of the posting of the videos. And are we gonna require all boards and commissions to leave the access to the Zoom hearings? Because I know with P&Z, there's no access to the first public hearing, and there's written minutes. And to me, if we want to have, we should have both available to the public.
Yes, and I think a way, Alicia's been looking at how to upload it to YouTube, and so that we could just create a YouTube page with all of them. So more to come on that. I appreciate your thoughts on that. One of the challenges we have is that our public is using this tool with different levels of technology. So if somebody's working on an old computer or an old version of an iPhone or a Samsung phone, there might be issues that they experience that the average other person doesn't. So thank you. Becky.
Becky Anderson here, and I'm speaking today on behalf of Complete Streets of Durham. Wanted to update you on the status of the conceptual plan we presented at the Board of Selectmen meeting on March 9th. This plan incorporated data and assessments completed by Nathan Jacobson Associates Engineering at the request of the town of Durham. Wanted to let you know this evening that we are anticipating that the engineering report will be finalized very soon. And once it is in hand, Complete Streets plans to submit the conceptual plan to the DOT for pre-approval, given that pre-approval by the DOT must be obtained in advance of any improvement work that they will be completing on Main Street, Durham. So that's my comment, and thank you.
Thank you. Martin French? Did you have your hand?
Yes, I just wanted to add that we should also remind the boards and commissions that they're still required to post their minutes, even though they have a Zoom video. They're still, so there has been an inconsistency to what the boards have been doing, and I assume that's a learning curve.
Yeah, thank you. Tom Wimler? You have to unmute, Tom.
Thank you. Just wanted to say good evening and wanted to comment on the Crooked Hill property. That property, I live at 594 Guilford Road, so that property is directly behind my house and abuts my property. I'm glad to see that it was sold and that someone that is from the town and has put effort into improving properties in the town was interested in purchasing it. I know there's a lot of controversy over this. That was my playground growing up as a kid, so I know the property very, very well, and it is not very developable if anybody wanted to do that in the future. And I know there were concerns that there were good building properties there. Be lucky if you could squeeze one property in there to build on. I think it's all ledge. It's a huge ravine. It's not very well set up for developing. And the access roadway right now actually goes off the property into Guilford to get up onto the top of the hill there. So there would be a lot of work required to do that. The fact that the money that was put up to pay for this, the bid, was by far much greater than the closest bid to that. So concerns with improprieties here, I think that anything that is making more money into the town based upon this sale, I think is a win-win. And to have, again, somebody that's a local person that has proven that they will improve properties in the town, I think is a very positive thing. So hopefully this will be allowed to move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Any other public
I'll
comment?
just comment. Thank you for that comment. I think there was some things that weren't, properly reported as far as, there was a bid process and one bid was 5 times higher than the next bid for that property. Things like that weren't necessarily reported. They know that it was open to everybody. It was on the website and whatnot. So I appreciate those comments.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Any selectmen comment?
Thanks, you missed it.
Again, I apologize for this shortened meeting. To the Board of Selectmen, so our next meeting is Monday. It will be a regular meeting. It'll be a full agenda. Do you think there's any necessity for a special meeting before that for any reason? There was nothing pressing for this week, in my opinion. Jacqueline, do you think there's any reason for a special meeting this week and we're all set for Monday?
Yeah, I just looking at the May 18th, what I have so far looks good. Just the stuff from the registrars, but nothing else unless the guys have anything.
Okay.
Laura, I know you talked a little bit about continuing it this way, even after we can get through, but have you heard a time frame? I mean, we're not included in the May 20th, correct?
No, we are not included in May 20th. And in the governor's call, we specifically talked about that. And Commissioner Lehman even talked about it today at our cost board meeting. He knows that municipalities are eager to start in-person meetings, but that has not been addressed yet. I actually spoke at the townwide meeting. I told him that I have some boards and commissions who are perplexed. Why can restaurants, for instance, have an outdoor dining room, but we can't have an outdoor meeting, public meeting? So they know that we're anxious and they need to address it. They also know that they still owe us guidance about having elections. And we've been promised that we would be receiving that soon.
Well, just from, and it's only my personal point of view, I'm certainly eager to get back to regular meetings. But as you said, maybe there's a way we can do both, because this is good for some people too. But, certainly I'm eager to be back at town hall.
And Jacqueline, you said we're going to be hearing from the registrars on the 18th?
Yes, the registrars, George, have an update to their emergency plan that the Secretary of State's office has required, because even though their emergency plan was supposed to be a all hazard plan, the Secretary of State wants all towns to update their plan to specifically address the kind of environment that we're living in right now.
But the focus hopefully isn't just presidential primaries, which are kind of a moot point at this point, or the presidential election. Hopefully someone's discussing the local elections.
Well, they're talking about local elections, but they're talking about ballot elections. There's only 16 towns, as we have learned, that have town meeting elections. Could be one of the reasons why we haven't gotten the attention that I believe that we should have gotten on this. But we're a small minority compared to the rest of the state. So I don't know that it's going to address that. And I hope by our Monday meeting that we're going to have more guidance on what to do. But the registrars did put together a plan to possibly have an election. And they're prepared to give that to our health director for approval if we don't get any other guidance before that.
Okay.
Okay. All right, so I will entertain a motion to adjourn so that we can now go attend the budget hearing for Board of Finance.
So moved.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you, everyone.
That sucked. I can't fucking believe Tom won that.